Hello everyone, my name is Lowko and welcome to a new video of StarCraft 2 Heart of the Swarm. Today we're gonna be discussing Scarletts Zerg vs Terran. Now I gotta admit, I'm a little bit of a Scarlett fanboy, I can't help it. Been following her for the last few years and she basically is one of the best Zerg players on the planet right now, period. And last weekend, which is actually yesterday and a few days before that, she was doing some magnificent Zerg vs Terran, taking out some incredibly good Terran players from pretty much all over the world, and that means Korea, because Koreans are really good at StarCraft. And during the weekend, she was doing the same Zerg vs Terran build order over and over again. She was not doing any sort of roach bane busting, she wasn't really doing anything funky, just the same straight up build that was basically taking out all Korean Terran. Now what she was doing was basically a gasless opener in Zerg vs Zerg, and in this video I will go over the exact thing that she was doing. Now please keep in mind that this build is not the easiest to execute, because since you're opening up gasless, you won't really have any sort of speed links to deal with early game aggression, so micro is going to be really important. If you have problems dealing with something like early Reaper harassment, this build order is going to be really hard to pull off, because basically you're gonna have to micro pretty much perfectly and not lose any drones, even though you're under a lot of aggression and you will still need to macro and all that type of stuff. Now what it basically comes down to is that she's droning incredibly greedy. Since she's opening up gasless, she's allowed to drone even greedier than you might already be thinking that most Zerg players are droning. She is using queens and a few slow Zerglings for defense, drones up about 3 bases on minimum amount of Zerglings, and starts really quick double upgrades. She basically starts cranking out all the units once she is satisfied with the amount of drones that she has, which is pretty much always right when she hits either 3 base saturation, but in some of the games even when she hits like 3.5 to 4 base saturation. So she's basically making only drones up until that point. So let's just jump straight in the game, and I hopefully will be able to explain exactly what she was doing. Alright, so the early part of the game, there's really nothing that much interesting going on. She opens up pretty damn standard. She opens up with a 9 Overlord, into a 15 Hatchery, into a 15 spawning pool. The only noticeable thing in the early part of the game is that she actually does not get an early gas geyser. Normally you would get these gases around 17 or 18 supply. Nope, not Scarlett. Then she follows it up with a 17 Overlord. So far it has been a 9 Overlord, into a 15 Hatchery, into a 15 spawning pool, into a 17 Overlord. Then, once the spawning pool finishes, she basically rushes out 4 queens as soon as she possibly can. So it's going to be 1 in the main, then 1 in the natural as well. She makes 1 set of Zerglings for scouting purposes, and once those queen finish, she actually starts another 2. So as soon as this queen pops out, she's actually going to start another one, and she's going to use this queen for injecting once, but then it is going to be dedicated to crew threading. Same goes for the queen in the natural. This queen also injects once, then will be dedicated to crew threading together with the other queen. With the second 25 energy of those queens, she actually uses them to crew tumor it up. The new queens will be used for crew threading or for queen injects instead. Around the 5 minute and 30 second mark, she makes double gas geysers. And around the 6 minute mark, she will start taking a 3rd base. Now this will seem very early, but it's very crucial that you actually take this base this early. Then, once she hits 100 gas, she's going to start Zergling Speed, 2 more gas, and double evolution chamber in the main base, in the natural. Then she also starts producing a few Zerglings for defensive purposes. After those Zerglings come out, she goes straight back into droning. Once the evolution chamber finishes, she starts +1 armor and +1 melee attack as soon as she possibly can. The next 100 gas will be spent on a Lair. She then also gets a Baneling nest. After this, she makes a few more Zerglings just for defense once again, but she straight up drones the 3rd base. Once she hit max saturation in the 3rd base, which should be around the 9 minute mark, she also takes the double gas right there, as well as a macro hatchery. Once max saturation is hit, she starts full on Zergling production. Once the Lair finishes, she starts Baneling Speed, as well as a Spire, as well as Overlord Speed. From here on out, she basically starts making as many units as she possibly can, and will start going for a 4th base, right when she is moving out or when her opponent is doing an aggressive push and she manages to defend that. +2/+2 is started as soon as she possibly can, which basically means she's starting that right when the +1/+1 finishes. She will also save up gas to bump out a bunch of Mutalisks right away. She will never go for 1 or 2 Mutalisks, but rather go for about 10 instead. Keep in mind to always have 1 or 2 overseers in each control group, which basically means that you have 1 at least in control group with the Mutalisks and 1 for the Zerglings and the Banelings, and you gotta morph Banelings as soon as you see your opponent move out. A few safety Banelings obviously will never hurt. Okay, now this build is pretty easy, but I would highly recommend you jump into a custom game. Put no opponent in there and just practice this like 10-20 times. I actually have the written version of the build order in description. That is a description apparently. No. So what I was saying, try to open up this build order a bunch of times versus nothing before actually trying it versus an opponent. Keep in mind that you need to be super duper greedy in the early part of the game, because else you will just simply start falling behind versus good Terran players. Also keep in mind that whenever you're playing against a Terran and you see him going for a greedy third, you want to be pretty much one base up on your opponent, so you might as well just switch into a really quick fourth yourself. If you do notice, however, your opponent is staying on 2 base for much longer, you can just stay on 3 and be pretty much totally fine since you're outproducing him and outmining him anyway. I hope this video gave you enough information about Scarletts Zerg vs Terran. Want to thank you guys all for watching. Have an amazing day, do not forget to smile. Please hit the like and the favorite button if you really enjoyed the video, because it helps me out a ton. And I'll see you again. Bye!